Long before English literature meant novels, before it meant sonnets, before it meant stage plays, it meant survival. This was a world where literature did not begin with beauty or leisure, but with danger, loyalty, and loss. The period we now called Old English or Anglo Saxon literature stretched roughly from the 7th century to 1066, the year of the Norman conquest. This date is not symbolic, it marks a violent break, linguistic, political, and cultural, after which English literature would never be the same again. The people who produced this literature did not think of themselves as English in a modern sense. They were tribal societies, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, Germanic settlers who arrived in Britain after the Roman withdrawal. They lived in a world without central government, without written law, and without permanent peace. Life was organized around the tribe, the sword, and loyalty. At the center of the society stood the Lord, the ring giver, the protector, and the source of identity. Around him stood the Comitatus, a band of warriors bound by absolute loyalty. And at the center of the world stood the Mead Hall, a place of feasting, storytelling, gift giving, and communal memory. To lose one's lord did not simply mean losing employment. It meant losing protection. It meant losing honor. It meant losing one's place in the world. This is why exile is the most terrifying fate in Old English poetry. Old English literature was not originally written. It was spoken. It was performed. Poems were sung or recited by scopes, professional poets who preserved tribal history through memory. These poets relied on rhythm, repetition, and formulaic language because memory mattered more than originality. Writing came later, and when it did, it came through Christian monasteries. Christian monks wrote down poems that had circulated orally for generations. This is why Old English literature carries two belief systems at once. On one hand, pagan warrior values, honor, vengeance, fame. On the other, Christian moral reflection, humility, judgment, salvation. These two systems do not cancel each other. They exist in tension. Old English poetry does not rhyme in the modern sense. Instead, it relies on alliteration, the repetition of initial consonant sounds. Lines are built around strong stresses, not syllable counts. The poetry also uses kennings, compressed, compound metaphors such as Railroad for the Sea or Battle Sweat for Blood. These were not decorative techniques. They were practical. They helped poets remember and audiences listen. The language itself, Old English, is almost completely unintelligible today. This is not difficulty, it is distance. At the emotional center of Old English literature lies one overwhelming obsession: loss. Loss of lodge, loss of home, loss of community, loss of youth, loss of physical strength. This loss is governed by weird or fate. Weird is impersonal. It cannot be negotiated with. It cannot be escaped. Even when Old English poems celebrate heroism, they end in death. Even when they praise God, they do not deny suffering. There is no promise of progress. There is only endurance. What survives today is fragmentary. Most Old English literature survives in a small number of manuscripts, copied by hand, often damaged, incomplete, or accidental. Entire poetic traditions have vanished without trace. Even the survival of poems like Beowulf is a matter of chance. Old English literature is haunted by the knowledge that memory itself can disappear, and yet the literature forms the emotional foundation of everything that comes later in English writing. Its concerns never disappear. They return again and again in tragedy, in epic, in modern despair. If you understand this period, you understand why English literature distrusts easy optimism, fears isolation, and returns obsessively to loss. And this long tradition begins not with refinement, but with one poem, standing alone in the threshold of English literary history.